Hi, welcome to the Pre-Snore History Hub. This is our fourth video on medicine, and it will be our last video on the Middle Ages. So we're going to be kind of summing up the Middle Ages and looking at why there was so little change during the Middle Ages. So let's just remind ourselves of our factors of change, because this is what we're going to be referring to. The main factors of change that we'll be looking at when we refer to the Middle Ages are individuals, religion, and also education as part of religion, and government as well. So we'll start with government. So the government held back medical progress because it wasn't the king's job to get involved in public health or medicine. The king's job was seen as the protector of the country instead. So the king's government never actually spent money on medical improvement. As we've said, his main task was defending the country in war and keeping peace, so it just wasn't a priority for the king. The king did order towns to be cleaned in 1349 during the Black Death, but he didn't do it regularly and did not pay for the cleaning, and no taxes were collected by the king's government to improve health and medicine. Therefore, there was no money to spend on research or medical breakthroughs. Okay, the second factor we're going to look at is individuals. So this mainly revolves around Galen and Hippocrates. So there was an insistence on the teaching of Galen, who wrote over 350 books while he was alive. However, who on the whole got most things wrong. So there was no advancement because people did not question Galen. He did get some things right, such as the brain controlling speech. However, Galen's books were the main text studied by new doctors, which held back progress as a lot of it was in fact wrong. There was also a lack of individuals making breakthroughs within the Middle Ages itself, because simply most people were uneducated. Education was ruled by the church, meaning that even those that got an education, the wealthy, were only taught Galen, and individual thinking was discouraged. Roger Bacon was thrown in jail by church leaders for encouraging people to think for themselves. And less than 100 doctors at universities were run by monks. People believed in Galen and Hippocrates because their treatments made sense for the time. People's symptoms when ill seemed to show the four humours. So, for example, a sick person might vomit yellow bile. This type of sickness seemed to prove that the body was unbalanced and trying to get rid of one humour. Nobody even suggested a new theory that was more persuasive. Galen and Hippocrates were convincing, and their work was so detailed, especially Galen's observation of a plague that happened in AD 167, that it made it very believable and very hard to challenge, especially for those that were uneducated at the time. So the third factor we're going to look at is the church. The church held back medical progress for many reasons. The church was rich and powerful, as we've said before, that there was a priest in every village and a bishop in every region. Through the bishops and priests, they controlled education. So they held back medical progress because the Bible said that God controlled every aspect of life. So it seemed logical that God also sent disease as a punishment for sin. So if God sent the disease, there was no need to look for another cure. Another reason is that the church told people that everything in the Bible was true and you could not challenge it. If you did, you would go to hell. This was a very real fear at the time for people, as tomb paintings in churches showed people what would happen to you if you went to hell. Fear of hell meant that hardly anyone dared to challenge the church about medicine. The church supported Galen, and although Galen wasn't a Christian, he had said the body had been created by one God who made all the parts of the body fit together perfectly. This complemented and agreed with Christian thinking on the creation of man. As a result, the church supported Galen's work, and this meant that no Christian dared to question it. Questioning Galen was akin to questioning God. So our final factor is education. This factor is strongly linked to the influence of the church because, as we've already mentioned, the church controlled education. This included the training of physicians at universities. There were very few physicians in England, fewer than 100 in the 1300s, partly because the training took 7 years and very few people could afford it. Education held back medical progress because the main part of physicians' training was reading Hippocrates and Galen, and they were taught that they got everything right, so were told not to experiment or to think for themselves about causes of disease. As a result, they didn't bother to come up with any new theories, and seeing as much of what Galen said was wrong, this massively held back medical progress. When new doctors learnt about anatomy, so where everything is in the human body, They observed dissections of bodies, as Galen recommended, but they were not trying to make discoveries. Dissections were simply another way of showing that Galen's descriptions of the body were right. This meant that hardly anyone tried to find out more about the structure of the body or how it worked, further holding back medicine. Okay, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Personal History Hub. In the next couple of videos, we're going to be looking at the Renaissance period.